So, welcome to my presentation on defining and non-defining relative clauses. This is a topic that might sound really difficult, but in fact it is not. And I know there are many of you who do that right anyway, but who don't know why. And there might still be some mistakes or some situations where you're a little confused. Now, let's have a look at that. Let's move on to the first slide, defining relative clauses. I've got some examples for you here, and I'm now going to read these sentences. The book which or that Tina recommended to me is really good. The movie which or that you told me about is really exciting. The man who or that I met at a party is quite nice. Now, these sentences have something in common, and what they have in common is that the underlined sentence parts are really important to understand what or who we are talking about. So, if the first sentence was just "the book is really good," we wouldn't know which book. If the second sentence was just "the movie is really exciting," we wouldn't know which movie. And if the third sentence was just "the man is quite nice," we would have no idea what person we'd be talking about. So the underlined sentence parts are necessary. They define words like book, movie, and man. And this is why they are called defining relative clauses. And now there are certain rules for defining relative clauses. Let's have a look at the next slide. The book which or that Tina recommended to me is really good. This is a defining relative clause. And as you can see, there are no commas, and you are allowed to use the word that. Now, let's have a look at non-defining relative clauses. We've got these sentences again, but I changed them slightly. 13 reasons why, which Tina recommended to me, is really good. So I changed something. Instead of the book, we've got the book title here. The movie Psycho, which you told me about, is really exciting. Again, we've got a title here. And my neighbor Max Smith, who I met at the party, is quite nice. And now what these sentences have in common is that it's always already clear what or who we are talking about. Let's imagine the first sentence was 13 reasons why is really good. We would know that we're talking about the book that has the title 13 reasons why. And if the second sentence was shortened to "the movie Psycho is really exciting," we would know that we're talking about the movie Psycho. And the last sentence can be shortened too, because we already know that we're talking about my neighbor Max Smith. The information that I met him at the party is not necessary to understand who we're talking about. Let's now move on to the next slide. As you can see, here we've got to use commas, and you may not use the word that. 13 reasons why, comma, which Tina recommended to me, comma is really good. These commas are important, because without these commas, there'd be no difference between a defining and a non-defining relative clause. Now, you might have noticed a certain trend, a trend that I will explain to you now. Usually when we've got a very general word, a word like book, city, or language, we've got a defining relative clause. This is why we can use the word that and why there is no comma. So if you write sentences like the book, that, you don't use commas. If you start a sentence with the city, you will need to define which city you're talking about, and usually you will not use a comma, and you can use the word that. On the other hand, if you've got a book title or a place name or the name of a specific language or the name of a person, you don't need to define these people, places, or books. It's already clear what you're talking about, and everything else that you mention is just extra information. Here you've got to use commas, and you cannot use the word that. Let's have a look at some more examples. In the first two sentences here, we already know what we're talking about. We're talking about Australia, there is just one Australia, and we're talking about Sydney. There is just one Sydney, or at least in this context, there is just one Sydney. So these sentences are non-defining. It is already clear what we're talking about, yeah? So the bits in the middle here, they are extra information. We could just leave this out. Australia has a population of only 25 million. And it is the 6th largest country in the world. Sydney is a fascinating city. And it is not the capital of Australia. These are just two separate pieces of information. In the third sentence here, we need to be careful. We're not talking about all spiders, but we're just talking about spiders that are very poisonous. Spiders that are very poisonous can kill you. This is different from spiders, comma, which are very poisonous, comma, can kill you. Because the second sentence would mean that all spiders can kill you because they are all very poisonous, and this is not true. Now, in your book, you've got a short definition and explanation of what a contact clause is, and I'll explain that to you too, because I think this will be easier for you to understand if you've got some colors here. Now, the definition, according to your book, is when a relative pronoun is followed by a subject and verb, you can leave it out and make it a contact clause. Now, let's have a look at the colors here. A relative pronoun is a word like who, that, or which. These are marked in gray. Then we've got the subject, which is marked in blue, like I or you. And we've got verbs, these are marked in red, like met, told, and like. Now, when a relative pronoun, like who or that or which, is followed by a subject marked in blue and a verb marked in red, we can leave this relative pronoun out. The man I met at the party is quite nice. The movie you told me about is really exciting. Koalas are the animals I like best. These sentences are perfectly fine, and contact clauses are frequently used, especially when we're talking. If we have to use formal style, like for example in reports or formal letters, it's better not to use contact clauses because sentences are clearer and more formal if we use these relative pronouns. So in your reports, please write the man who I met, the movie that you told me about, and koalas are the animals that I like best. This is all you need to know about defining and non-defining relative clauses. I hope this has not been too complicated and not too confusing. Of course, you may just watch this video again, watch it twice, watch it 3 times as often as you have to or need to. And of course, you can just have a look at the PowerPoint presentation or the PDF version of the PowerPoint presentation. And of course, have a look at the exercises in your book. And now, good luck with your homework.